how we'll structure the conversation is that we'll have our executive give the perspective, and then we'll have our current EA add on to what has been said and also give his perspective. And so please, over to you once again, sir. Talk to us about the expectations and the demands on an executive and therefore on the EA who supports the executive.
All right. Thank you, Wanda, once again. Being an executive is essentially being the eyes and ears of an organization. And the function of the eyes and ears is essentially sight and perception, basically listening. One of the things that you're required to do as a leader, which essentially is the role of an executive, is to foresee and to envision where the company is going to. And that comes with a lot of, I would say, these days, it comes with a lot of responsibility, essentially, because of the type of business environments that we have. We all know how volatile and how uncertain times are. Most of us should be familiar with the concept of VUCA, but I won't bore you with that. The bottom line is that business environment today is globally so unpredictable that you're constantly needing to iterate what you might call your strategies to achieve your vision. The vision should necessarily to your why, your ethos, what you want to achieve, what's your mission or vision statement, meaning why did you set out to do business? But the strategy to achieving that constantly changes because of the operation environment. It's pretty much like navigating a ship in very turbulent waters. You're constantly moving things. You can't set your ship on a particular course and just leave it and go and relax. You're constantly iterating, meaning that you're on your toes all around the clock. And that's, where I'd like to start from. And to be able to do that, you need sight, like I said, and you need to be able to, also hear what is going on. So you're constantly trying to feel for information, whatever kind of information that can give you an advantage in the, market. You're constantly trying to understand what policy direction is saying whilst you're setting your eyes on course to where you're trying to drive the business. So that means that you are on high alert all the time. An executive does not necessarily stop working. You might be at your desk in terms of, your current location, or you might be anywhere else, whether you're networking or you're even on a vacation, or you're constantly thinking about the business, thinking about, progress, thinking about what, type of position in your business is taking vis-a-vis what is going on in the market. So what that means is that in considering the type of executive that will be appropriate for that individual, that leader who is trying to drive a business to achieve a specific vision or a goal, you need someone who in itself, the person essentially wears a similar hat, meaning the person is not coming in essentially to be a taker but a giver. And I'll explain what that means. As a taker, you're waiting for instructions to be passed on to you. Oh, help me make coffee. That's not what an executive assistant does. Or help me quickly run, some reports here and there. Now, executive assistant, of course, would have moments where you are, taking that on that type of assignment. Well, for the most part, you have to think like the executive himself. And that's the difference, so to speak, between a personal assistant in the broad sense of it and the executive assistant. The personal assistant essentially is focused perhaps on making the personal life of the executive easier, maybe by way of ensuring things like, meetings and appointments are attended to on time, and maybe personal travels are addressed. But an executive assistant is a more strategic assignment than the personal assistant role. And I say that one of the fastest track to becoming someone who can, be an executive yourself in the future is to serve under a top executive that you admire, that is doing great things. Because what happens is that you have what you call backdoor access into the workings of the entire organization, unlike a lot of people in the organization. What a lot of people don't understand, and I get why Crypto Academy is saying that this is one of the top, hot and leading roles for an early career professional. It gives you a fast track to understanding how the entirety of a business works, because you're in the room discussing some of the most significant and strategic things that drive the organization. So in a nutshell, the assistant is not some receiving component of the executive team, but a strong support who provides what I would call strategic support to the executive. And I'll go into the reasons why, in the future, because we want to break the conversation in a way that we can have, maybe questions, of course, or also have the segment. But what an executive assistant does is provide strategic support to the leader of an organization that is driving that organization towards a specific goal and towards a specific position in the market. Thank you, Wando.
Thank you so much. Femi, please share your perspective.
Right. Thank you. I think for me, to be very honest, I think Mr. Tayo actually mentioned a lot of things I wanted to mention. But I think the first thing to know as an executive assistant is the fact that you are your boss's eyes, ears within the organization. One of the things I learned quite early when I took on this role was how much it's easier for me to access certain information that might not necessarily come to top level management. Right. So over time, I began to see how very strategic my role is. And just like you said, I mean, it's a highly strategic role, because one of the things that you also do is to make sure that the life of your boss or your executive you're working with is actually easy. He has a lot of things in his mind. He needs to be able to think strategically. He needs to be able to solve the problem, because every day he keeps solving problems. And sometimes if you're not close enough to that seat, close enough to that place, you probably don't know how much executives are going through every day. I mean, I've had several sleepless nights in the past couple of days. I think last time I had a night rest was like 3 days ago. In that sense, why? Because there are things can keep happening basically. And just like I said, they keep iterating the direction. We have a meeting last week. It's going to, and basically you have to be on top of those things. Meetings have to be attended. There are different inquiries. You manage emails. So basically, the expectation of an EA is someone who literally, to an extent, if you take a backseat to understand what the business does, is to embody your boss. Now, you're not replacing the person, but to an extent, you understand that there's a level of apprenticeship and understanding of the business that you must have, because most report comes to your table. You don't want your boss reading all the documents. You most likely understand the business. Now, in my new role, I'm less than 3-4 months in, but in a candid way, I think I've gotten a very good grasp of what the business is, of what the business model is. Why? Because majority of those information passes through me. I'm always in all the high profile meetings. I can't leave. I'm not an executive, but I must be in the meeting at the same time. So over time, I've noticed that the expectation is really, really, really high. And I think one of the most important attributes, or one of the things that is very important, is the EA and the executive must understand that you must maximize your EA. I think one of the first things I told my boss when I came in was, while I understand the structure it is, I just don't understand that I want to make his life easy. And I think from feedback in the past couple of few months, I think I've been doing that. because it's just what it is. If your boss or your executive you're working directly cannot categorically say, oh, this young man or this young woman who is my EA is making my life easy. I mean, reports gets him stable as early as possible. He has dashboard that he doesn't have to go through any documents. It's all linked. I mean, and to an extent that nowadays just that, oh, just one ask the manual. So I think over time I've in the past I've discovered that you are literally the live wire of the office. You run the office, and you can also, to an extent, as long as you begin to understand the business dynamics, what the business does, and literally also in charge of operation, a couple of operations that can pass through you, you see it. And then, I don't want to jump the guns because I believe there are a couple of questions that we're going to answer in this, but I think you're the life wire of the office of the executive you're working for. I mean, you can't be looking for files, you can't be looking for where this is. You should, if you take your role very seriously in that sense, that can contribute to your success, know where this is. If this is asked of you, you know exactly where it is. And if you're lucky enough, probably have an administrative assistant, it makes life easy, but if not, you probably have to also run those administrative. So I believe that the ability to adapt, for me, I think adaptability is actually one of the most important skill set, soft skill set, anybody who wants to actually excel and help his boss or the executive you're working with succeed in their role. Thank you very much.
For the next perspective to cover, trust and accountability. And Femi, you left off in talking about one of the key skills, right, being adaptability. So going back to you to talk about trust and accountability, right, to add that on to what we would say will be the essentials. In your role in the past 3 months, how has this come up for you? And once you respond to that, we'll allow Mr. Oshiemi also talk about how critical this is in the executive EA relationship.
Thank you very much. I think it's very important to actually know that trust is very important because I hear the things that I shouldn't hear in that sense. I mean, a random employee in the organization won't hear that. I see the things a random employee will never see. I mean, there are things I've seen. I'm like, oh, so wow, really? And why? It stays with me and my boss. It stays with me because the role you're sitting in is it's a role where if trust is broken, you might as well just leave the role and leave the organization. Because you see everybody, and to an extent, I've also learned to be more very diplomatic because the relationship is a very high one. It's at stake. I know his itinerary. I know when he's around, when he's not around. I know when he's around and doesn't want to be around. He doesn't want to be seen. I know when he has traveled and he's back and he's not yet back. There's a lot of information that you have to manage. And I think one of the things you could do to build trust at that level, effectively, is information management. If anything happens between you and your boss or any information you hear it can't come out. If it ever comes out, seeing that it was just the two of you, except your boss mentioned it somewhere, fine. But you have to be able to actually manage those information. You see data, you see the exact financial account, you see the exact management account, the exact numbers. You see the exact loopholes, you see what is going on, you see I received a couple of days ago, I received a particular mail which I had to respond to, and I'm like, okay. And so I think for me, I found that one of the ways to build trust in that high-stake relationship is information management. You have to be as highly confidential as possible. I've seen people try to play politics with me, want to get friendly, not just get information. No, you see, your mouth is as deep as possible. Because if you don't do that, once information begins to leak from the highest office in the organization, then there's trouble. So you hear the information, you keep it to yourself. It's highly confidential. It might not be in your contract. It might not be, which I think it should be if any HR is trying to write a contract for an EA, especially when it's really at stake that level. Your confidentiality level has to be serious. You have to know how to manage information. You have to also know how to extract information and use what is important, what you can use. And at the same time, you also need to be able to tell the person you're working directly with that you're for them. I didn't know how much office politics was serious until I got into this role, right? Maybe my first experience at working was where it seems everybody likes each other in that sense. But in the past couple of months, it's been very dramatic. So I think it's the most important thing to build that trust, which I think for what it works, I'm already earning that. And my boss begins, I mean, just calls me into the office, locks the door, and then, oh, this, and this going on. I'll just put this in my calendar. Please don't put in general one, remove this here. Is the fact that you have been able to manage high value information. I mean, you can keep everything as confidential. And please too, don't get familiar. I mean, it's very important not to get familiar. Yes, you can get friendly, but not familiar. I mean, you get to know your boss. You could crack a little bit and joke, just ease the moment, the tension here and there. But I think if you're able to actually manage information, I think you're on a very good road to actually build amazing trust. And relationship will definitely last. And you also definitely help your boss in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Osiemi, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Femi has said some of the most fundamental things. I happen to have a very, very effective and a good executive assistant at this time. I have been privileged to work with at least, I'll say, 6 executive assistants in the last maybe 2018 to now, it's about 6 years. So yeah, about 6 years. Some didn't stay for more than, let's say, 3 to 6 months, and some stayed for up to 2 years plus. So I'll just talk about, perhaps, maybe from an experiential point of view, what my experience was with some of my favorite executive assistants, just to provide a little hands-on context. So just as Femi has said, and broadly speaking, discreteness is very important. Now, the reason why discreteness is important is not because the executive is essentially setting out to keep secrets from the beginning, but information is power. Information is money. Information is a key determinant for a lot of things. Information determines how people respond, how people win. You understand? Now, it's not a winning between the executive and the employees and things like that. Depending on the environment that you have, my experience has been that the executive assistants that did the most are the people that earned my trust very early. And earning the trust, I'll tell you the process of earning the trust of your executive. The key is to try to understand who it is you're working with. And it starts with a lot of emotional intelligence. I mean, I would say very easily that one of the reasons why Femi will feel very empowered and successful in the role where he is right now is that he has paid attention to the type of executive he's working with and try to understand the person's nuances. What kind of person is this? There are different types of leaders. There are people who are very in touch with the organizations they work with and in touch with the employees. And a lot of times you'll find them, crossing, so to speak, that executive bridge and engaging with people. While the executives that are very, into their own thoughts and into the things that they're doing. And so, when you have those kinds of executives as an assistant, you're doing more of a bridge assignment. Whilst on the other end, if the executive is very open and relatable and very, very accessible, what you're trying to do is to manage the person's personal availability to make sure the person is effective. You see what I'm saying? So you're trying to ensure that the person's availability is not being taken for granted and the person is focused on critical things. And then you're also managing, perhaps cleaning up things that the person might have left because of the person's significant level of availability. Now, in earning the trust of your executive, like I said, you want to find out what type of personality. So you're looking at the different types of leaders. There's situational leadership, broadly speaking, but there are leaders who are more hands-on, the leaders who are more, they just want to delegate and move on. The leaders who have a very mysterious aura around them, very distant, very unavailable. You want to project their humanity in that kind of role. So there is no one-size-fits-all approach to managing the concept of trust. But like I said, the primary trust you want to win is the trust of your principal. Now, having won the trust of your principal, you cannot also be an effective executive assistant if you don't win the trust of the team. This is the executive is not in a silo. It's an organization. It's a team effort. There will likely be other senior members of team who might in themselves also be executives. There would be senior members of team who are not necessarily executives, but very high up there and very strategic. Femi talked about, even getting involved in operations. In some organizations, if, for instance, you are the EA to, let's say, the CEO, there could be a CFO, there could be a COO, a chief operating officer, a chief financial officer. Now, these in themselves are also very strategic and powerful people. If you don't know how to manage them, apart from your principal, and make sure that the information that you're releasing to them is the right information they need, and the one you need to keep from them for reasons that you understand what your principal does not want to let out. You need to know which one to manage, what information is required for them to effectively carry out their role. Then the people under the C-level, senior managers and the likes, who, like, Femi also mentioned, they want to have access to certain information. They want to even have access to your principal because perhaps of favors. There are all kinds of intentions for human beings. So one of your strongest points will be a very high level of emotional intelligence, information management.
This is so good. I don't know if you're taking notes, right? And even beyond the EA role, I find this conversation to be so meaningful because in one way or the other, you're going to have to be interacting with executives, right? And I think we mentioned this in the last webinar where we were talking about you may not be carrying the title of EA, but what if with the structure of your organization, it is only you and the executive that are in the team, right? So what if you have an organization where a specific function doesn't need to be that big? So it is the most senior person and then you. These tips and insights we are getting are still so good to just be able to know how to walk around and work with executives in a company.
So the other thing you need to also add to your high-level emotional intelligence is a very tactical communication skill. You must be a good communicator, not just verbally, that's spoken. You must also be able to write very well and manage information in the way you write. So that's very important. That's very important, right? In addition to being able to write and speak very well, this is still around trust. You must also be strong on data management. Data management, you understand? You have access to highly sensitive information in the organization. You must know what information to release for the effective execution of other people's work and the one that you need to keep. You must not be so forward as to keep information that will help. Some people think that, being an executive assistant is the same thing as being the chief security officer of of the executive. You are not. What you're doing there is not essentially some secret service type of role. You also must know what information you need to put out there. Of course, looking at the entire context of the interactions within the organization, you must be very quick on your feet in terms of learning nuances of the organization. So I'd say you want to win the trust of your principal, you want to win the trust of the executive team. And I say that within the context of organizations that have multiple individuals in the C-suite cadre. Then the next level is the senior managers who report directly to your principal. They must not feel like you have become what I would call I'm trying to look for the right example. Someone who is a barrier. Do you understand? You cannot be seen as a barrier. At the same time, your principal might want you to do a lot of work of shielding him or her away from, excessive access. So you have to play that role of understanding how to bring their concerns to your principal, give them the required access, right? And also manage the expectations when your principal does not want to be accessed. You understand? Very important, tricky, but not difficult if you have paid a lot of attention to building your emotional intelligence and your communication skills. Those two key skill sets will help you to really manage the trust equity that you need to build across the team. Your role is not to only build trust with your principal, full stop. That would be perhaps a 50 to 60% critical requirement, but the other part to make sure that the organization does not fail and you have nothing, so to speak, to really assist at the end of the day is to make sure you've also built trust with the team. And they see you as an enabler. Executives need to be reached. Let me be honest. Executives need to be told what is going on. And you can't be the only one telling the person everything. You can't be the one who is filtering literally everything. You understand? It's very important as an executive not to become a complete, so to speak, barrier for information getting to your principal. The principal needs to feel different parts of the organization. So you deliberately at some point excuse to give them access. So that's very important. Just to add to what Femi has said. Thank you very much.
We're moving to the next perspective, and we've kind of touched on that as we were responding to the last perspective, which is one of the essentials, right? Communication styles and expectations around communication. To layer on what has already been shared, are there further insights specific to styles of communications and expectations around communications that we need to know?
Okay. Now, communication styles. Let me see what I can say about that. So, the executive, if I were to use myself as an example, may be either big on writing emails or not big on writing emails. The executive may be big on standing in front of his team and speaking, giving reassurances and providing, direction, by way of open communication with his team, or may not. The executive may be big on one-on-ones. The second one I said there was, having like town hall meetings with the team. The executive may be very big on one-on-ones, likes to meet people individually in his office to, interact with them, or maybe more of, just mass communication, say to everyone, something at the same time and everybody go figure out, because some executives believe that the one-on-ones could tend to create multiple layers of interpretation because, I spoke to you, so you felt like I said it this way. The other person thought I said something else, and it creates multiple layers of instructions and expectation. Well, whatever the preferred communication style of your principal is, your main role is to ensure that you're reading the room correctly and complementing whatever gaps you find in the communication of the executive. And I'll tell you some of the easy ways to do that, right? Since we're, at least talking practically now. Number one, you need to have a communication calendar. It's very important. What do I mean by a communication calendar? There are critical, components of the organization's financial year. Let's use financial year because we're talking about a company. That certain things need to be said. I.e., let's say it's the beginning of the financial year. let's say there's a significant milestone that's been reached in terms of sales or growth, or let's say there's a crisis, or let's say it's a moment to appreciate employees. Let's say it's International Workers' Day or whatever. You need to have a calendar. And the reason why is that you want your principal to be seen as humane, as someone who cares, who is strategic, who is sensitive, and who, takes initiative. You don't want the person to be reactionary as opposed to responding. You need an executive that is responding correctly to the team. So what do? You have a communication calendar for your principal that you can run by him or her, identifying, the specific communication that he would like to put out on specific important milestones. And what you do on such occasions is that you have prepared an email, preferably, if it's an organization that is big on business, you find out that and you help him either by drafting and getting him to send, or you send it himself. With my EA has unfettered access to my office email. You understand? To my official email. What that means is that literally every information, no matter how sensitive, he's able to see it. And the reason why I could do that is because of what we just talked about, which is trust, right? So what he does is that based on our conversation, you filter through my mails twice a day. First thing in the morning to see anything you missed. Typically by 9, he has sent me like a list of emails that need to be attended to. We have a rule, the ones that he can attend to based on the type of request. We've defined that, and we define that based on, looking at his capacity, the trust to be able to say, okay, he can write very similarly like how I write, and that's something that I also need to mention here. You must understand the tone of voice of your principal, because one thing that is likely, and I want to repeat that again, and you can write that in the comment section, tone of voice. There's what you call a tone of voice in communication. How does this person speak, or how does this person write? When you understand that, then you try to mimic that until you get to near perfection in terms of the tone of voice. So what you then do is, in your writing, you make sure that you are capturing his tone of voice and pushing information out in the way he would love it. I haven't developed a communication plan. So I've mentioned the communication plan. I mentioned the fact that you need to be responsive as opposed to being reactive. You need to have, consensus between yourself and the principal as to which he wants you to handle. Some principals will say, send it. Some principals will say, send it to me to send it. Whatever that is, you need to figure that out and, make sure that you are on point in terms of communication. Now, that is mostly written. The verbal communication is also equally important. I can't overemphasize this. And one of the reasons that you will be in very, very sensitive meetings, high-level meetings, where you're meeting with top executives as well, or meeting with partners, meeting with bankers, meeting with, institutions, the board, all kinds of things. So how do you manage yourself in those kind of rooms? I'll tell you a quick story. When I started my consulting career, which was my first job, when I left school, I was opportuned to work in a business consulting firm, and as what I would call a management trainee at that time. I'd not even gone to serve at that time. Between the first 2 weeks of my joining that firm, I found myself in front of the group managing director of Fidelity Bank at that time. And it was my first high-level meeting ever in life in terms of meeting with the CEO or the managing director of a big organization in that capacity. And, of course, I dressed the part, looking sharp and everything. And I got there. My job really was to take notes. The conversations were so high level, I could rarely contribute. Now, you don't go to those kind of rooms and start talking when they did not call you. It's not wise to do that. You have to be discreet. You have to be very sensitive. You're not trying to, demonstrate some sort of smartness when it's not required. Your job at that point is to listen and to feed off as much information. And where you are asked to say anything, you are very careful about what you say, but you're not afraid of making a mistake. You essentially express yourself. One of the ways you can express yourself is come off with a lot of respect and admiration for people who are leaders. Never assume that leadership is so easy. You know, some people have this mentality that, oh, leaders, you know, just enjoy all the perks. So you have that almost latent beef, so to speak, for people who are in top level roles. It will show up in those kind of environments if you have those kind of mindset. But appreciate what it took for any leader to get to where they are. And that will likely help you when you're communicating with them. You want to learn as much from them. You want to, you know, acknowledge the things that they have achieved, and then you want to provide important information. What are the things you can do to help you always sound smart in the room? As much as you can. Never go, as much as you can, I said, never go for any meeting unprepared. I'm packing everything I can say because I don't know the other questions that will come up. So forgive me if I'm taking a bit long. Never go for any meeting unprepared if you can avoid it. What I mean is, if you know about any meeting, like this particular meeting, for instance, we're having, if you knew, for instance, that I was going to be speaking here and you got any information, as much as possible, 30 minutes, 1 hour before your meeting, do Google checks, check a few things, know a few things about the room you're going to be in, and that will help your verbal communication. Internally too, it works the same. You're going for, let's say, a management what you call in a committee meeting, or what you call a monthly performance review meeting, or whatever it is. You don't want to be seeing the monthly performance report for the first time. Just because you're not in finance does not mean you should not have scanned it to see, oh, what's the revenue, what's the profit, what's the, cost, here and there, just a few details, or what are the numbers that stand out. You want to have, because you may not necessarily prepare the reports, but you don't want to go into that room blank. Okay? So you do your homework, you're on your feet all the time. When you say you're on your feet all the time, it doesn't mean that you don't have a life, but it means that you are a proactive individual. You don't allow time to slip. You don't waste time getting distracted with things that do not matter to your role or your career. So it's a serious role for a serious-minded individual. And like I said, it's one of the fastest track to becoming a very highly skilled and highly valuable professional in any work environment. I'll tell you a quick secret. If I were to hire any role today, if I see that the person has been an executive assistant to any significant, executive, in the course of their career, that automatically gives them an edge over a lot of other people for me, because I know that they know. I'm not talking about hiring an executive assistant. I'm saying even if I had to hire for sales today, or hire for human resource, or hire for operations today, if I see that maybe somewhere along your career you've been an executive assistant, I will likely ask questions around that. And depending on how you answer, you already have an edge over the rest, because you have what I call back access into the workings of the success of an organization. So that's where I'll leave it for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So Femi, I will allow you add on anything you want to add on to that as we go into the next perspective. So you will just quickly, say what you want to say around communication and anything else, but also go on to talk to us about career growth and professional development, which is the next perspective we're going to be discussing.
All right, thank you. Genuinely, I think do I have anything to say? But I just want to emphasize something that Sataya mentioned. So very honest, I think communication, yes, they can teach it, but you really have to read the room as an EA. You have to get to a point where you understand that this thing I'm doing, there's a stick to it, basically. Because I remember when the first week I resumed, I noticed that this after I had noticed now. So when my boss says, "Oh, Emmanuel, I want you to write a memo," I write my memo in a very diplomatic way, and then I send it to him. He said, "Oh, Emmanuel, come in," and then he edits it, and then he rewrites it in a very assertive way. It goes straight to the point. You did not do so and so. So this is what I expect of you. Give me feedback by close of business. I write differently in that sense. So after the first correction and second correction, never happened again. So when I sent me a VN and say, Emmanuel, I want to type a memo, I want you to write a memo to somebody, I write it in a very assertive way, because I'm writing the memo as in. You are not writing it as yourself. So you have to learn the tone of the role. And basically, and another thing that really helps you is seeking clarity. You can ask 55 questions, please. If you are not clear, because the information you're about to disseminate is very, very important. So if you are not clear, go back and go and ask. And I think I've done that over time now. And at a point too, I mean, I'm writing on the paper. I think I couldn't get it, but I think over time now I've gotten used to it. Please seek clarity at all times. And finally, also please, just like I said, don't go to any meeting unprepared. You know, normally if my boss is going for a meeting, there's only something I prepare for aid memoir. In other words, I give him insight, who is meeting, the organization, who are people inside. It's very important. But as much as possible, don't prepare the document as if you're just preparing for your boss. Also prepare it in the case where you ask questions. Because the truth is, you will need it. You'll be shocked at when it's just a clip of finger. Say, man, hey, what's that number again? What's revenue? It can't be blank. And you must make sure that number you're about to supply is verifiable. Because if you give them the wrong number and everybody ran with the wrong number in the meeting while they're waiting for the person to bring the document or something, then it's basically over time they probably just stop asking you questions. So as much as possible, please prepare before any meeting. As regards Chris, I think that's why I have concerning communication, because he actually adequately had mentioned almost everything I would have wanted to mention. Concerning career advancement, I think one of the beautiful things that being an EA has done to me is literally seeing my mind assimilating several years of experience from several other executives, right? I'm in a room with people who have 25 years of experience, 30 years of experience, 20 years of experience, and then they all discuss. It looks like my mind has become a foam that just soaks everything in. Even in the way I communicate in the meeting now, when they ask me questions. And I think one of the things that also helped me in understanding the business as soon as possible is the fact that you have access to all the information. You hate your career, even within the organization, the way you begin to understand how the business runs, even when other top level what's it called, role shows up, mid-level management role shows up. You might even be new, you might not have even spent as much number of years as other people who are probably qualified for the role in that sense. But because you have been in those meetings, you understand the business, it gives you a little bit of edge in the organization, outside the organization. I think just like the advice I was giving when I was about leaving, Enzo then to this role, when Mr. Mane told me that, I mean, it's literally your apprenticeship for being a CEO, being an executive, because if you take it seriously and you pay attention to it, you do it. Just like you said, please, no matter what you're heard about executives, they are just chilling. Really, being in the role, they are not chilling, please. Those people, most executives work are twice or 3 times or 4 times as hard than a random executive. They don't sleep, they sleep, you're awake by 2 a.m., 3 a.m., you're running to things, you're active, you're proactive. And one of the things you could do for you is to be proactive. I mean, never stop trying to develop yourself. You're reading, you're attending courses, spend your money to take courses. And sometimes, I think I wanted to mention this, I forgot earlier, is also, I mean, when you're 21st century as the EA or any role you have to be, there are tools that will make life easy for you. Please don't hesitate. You want to be in a meeting for the next 6 hours, you don't have an AI transcribing tool. Why? Are you sure you're going to remember everything? I mean, I'm in meetings where I'm meant to send a summary, an action point, like an hour immediately after the meeting. In fact, sometimes 30 minutes later, because after the meeting, we have another meeting in which the action point we discussed in this meeting is of use. So if you have to pay for tools to make work easy for you, because it makes you more efficient. Yes, it doesn't replace you, because the truth is, I believe that sometimes, even with some of these tools, the mental agility, sometimes the critical thinking comes from you, really, because you are in the room. You can read the room, you know the information they need. But please spend your money, never stop developing yourself, because if you stop, you plateau. And at the point, you just start noticing that you're becoming irrelevant in that sense. So please never stop. And if there's any skill set that you will need, I mean, to stay relevant in the future, it's your ability to learn. Like I said, never stop learning. Last week, is it last or 2 weeks ago, we needed to build a price engine, basically in the organization. And really, I mean, they've been doing back and forth with it before I came, and then I was in a conversation in the meeting. We had like a monthly performance review meeting, and they discussed about it. And after the meeting, I saw that they've been doing okay. You guys have not delivered. And I had a conversation with my boss. Okay, so I think I could help with this. And he called the person involved, the senior manager, and go, "Oh, Emmanuel could help out." And then now, what brought the what helped me in a way to bring the value to the table to create a price engine now that is already now live. We're not using the organization. They are now using the organization. I'm not. That's not even my office. I'm the EA. But I understand the importance of that role because I've been developing myself over time. It was easier for me to actually chip in there. To be very honest, 4 months in, I'm already in that sense now for the purpose of doing it. I mean, there's already a slight turn of event of, oh, maybe Emmanuel could help with this, and yes, you're seeing your career, you are developing little by little. So please don't stop learning. I mean, learn as much as possible. Immerse yourself, just like I've learned. See, there's nothing you do that if you don't immerse yourself, that you will probably not get the best out of it. Immersion, you're in your job, what you have to do. I mean, if they have to ask you any question on your job, it should be questions that are totally out of your hobby. It should be immersive. You should know what you're doing. And as an EA, immerse yourself. Now I have things where my boss just says, Emmanuel, did you get that? In meetings. And I exactly know what he's saying. Before I would have said, oh, sir, maybe my first one, I would have said, okay, I didn't get that. I didn't say, oh, do you hear what so and so? But now if he says, Emmanuel, did you get that? I knew exactly what he's saying. And by the time I'm giving you advice, he replies with a thumbs up most times, thumbs up. And over time, I found that the more you develop yourself at taking courses in strategy, taking courses in corporate finance, pay for, you just continue learning because as an EA, just like Mr. had said, it's a fast track. In the next couple of years, you might be applying for what's it called? An operations role in the next couple of years. Who knows? You might even be doing finance. Who knows? Next couple of years, you're doing sales, marketing. But see, the immersiveness of having back-end understanding of how a business run, the business model of an organization, how the business makes money. And literally, you can literally take that and innovate in another organization. That's one thing I'm currently experiencing with it's the company currently has a new GCO from who came from a different industry. But when he talks in the meetings, it was evident that the number of years he had gathered in a different industry, there's now a way he talks and he innovates those things into the industry, which shows that knowledge is never a waste. You gain the knowledge as much as is your knowledge, you've immersed yourself, you've absorbed it. You can use it anywhere. So please, I genuinely believe that no matter what you do, please immerse yourself. It is very important. You can't do without it. Thank you very much.
The world needs problem solvers. This is what I want to round off. You need to just solve problems. Nobody is looking for, certificates. Nobody's looking for big grammar, going to English. I went to Harvard. Who cares? By the time you get into the arena, what everyone wants, including your executive in this case, is a problem solver. And what is a problem solver? A problem solver is firstly someone who can identify that there's a problem. Because you can't solve a problem you can't identify. Not every situation will give you overtly what the problem is. You need to see the problem. So like he was trying to say, when you get into an organization, what you're trying to understand is where are the gaps here? Where are the gaps? What problems can I solve? The employee who firstly thinks about his JD as opposed to the problems he can solve is an employee that won't go too far. I repeat that. Your JD gives a broad description of the expectations of the organization in what you call standard temperature and pressure. Did you get that? When we're in school, they say standard temperature and pressure, STP, meaning when everything is normal and as expected, this is what your JD should be. But I'm sure there's nobody in this room who disagrees with me that temperature and pressure is never standard. You might have heard, on social media, pressure tiwa. There's constant pressure. There's pressure within an organization. There's pressure without. So you literally don't have a situation where things are just, going on, a groove. Everything is just flowing the way it's supposed to be. Things are constantly changing. What the valuable professional wants to do is to identify where the gaps are, where the problems are, and it goes ahead to fix it. A very good example, like, Femi mentioned is, you have a task like creating a pricing system. You could very well just delegate that assignment or essentially just coordinate, the execution of it. But you might very well have, in the course of your personal development, come upon some of these concepts. You can bring that value to the table. What organizations are looking for, I repeat, are problem solvers. The degree of problems you solve is the degree to which you would ascend in your career. That's how it works. People will pay serious value for a problem solver. And when people are looking for ways to cut costs, they're never trying to cut costs on a problem solver. There's problems. You understand? So be a problem solver. Don't be an employee. Now, the reward, and I want to say this as maybe one of the most potent statements I will make this evening. Your biggest reward as a professional working within the construct of an organization is not the remuneration they give you. Your biggest reward would always be the person you become on account of the challenges that is put in front of you. The value is you. The business is you. What you are building is you. No amount of money they pay you will be significant enough to replace what you can become if you invest in yourself. Success is not what you achieve. Success is what you become. You become a successful person by the type of person that you have become on account of the challenges that an organization puts in front of you. And every organization will automatically put challenges in front of you. One of the most potent statements I made when I took on this role about 11 years ago as the chief operating officer, I said to them, one of my most remarkable quotes, so to speak, from a writer that I really admire called Og Mandino. He's an old writer, lived about 100 years ago. He said, the surest way to success is to do more than is required of you every time, no matter the task. Meaning you must, from day one, be an extra miler in your mind. Be an extra miler. You're constantly thinking, what can I add to this? I've been given this assignment. What can I do? If you've been given the opportunity to create a business dashboard, if they told you 5 metrics are important, think if they missed anyone. Maybe what they really need is 7. So when you've done stop there, think like, okay, is there anything else? But if you are my JD is this, then you'll do 5 and you'll stop. So you must be an extra miler mentally. It must be your mental framework. What can I add to this? It may not even be the number of metrics but it may be that they've asked for it in this way, but you've added some colors and some numbers to it to give clarity. That extra mile, that must be your signature all the time. So that every time anything comes from your desk, from you personally, there's a signature of Femi, of Abby. I mean, I see so many names here, Joshua, Shegun. There's that signature there that, that is his work. That's her work. He put in that extra touch. So, I mean, if there's anything I can leave with you this evening, what you become is the real price. It's not what you're paid. What you're paid after you take care of a couple of bills, rent, and a couple of things, the money would, deplete at some point. You invest some of it. But what you become is what continues to appreciate. If anyone understands what you call valuation here, value is intrinsic. It's not just your current, it's what you are personally. So what you become as an individual professional is what truly continues to grow and gives you access into bigger and bigger rooms until you are at the very top of the food chain, and you yourself would then be the one that needs an executive assistant. Thank you very much.